Welcome to another video from Sturmpanzer.com. This will be a quick tutorial on German Gliederung documents. These are the organizational charts and diagrams. We're going to start with this chart here which is basically the largest overview. This is the German Army. And you can see we have sections that cover OKH and then the Army groups like Army Group South A. And then you can see that there's also the armies that are assigned to the Army groups, the corps assigned to the armies, and then the divisions. So we're going to focus in on OB West. We see that OB West has Army Group H, Army Group B, Army Group G. And we see that Army Group B is showing the 116th Panzer Division as a reserve unit. And also Army Group G is showing the 85th Corps as a reserve unit. So these units could have been pulled out of one area to be put into another area, or there may be refitting or something of that nature. If we zoom in on Army Group B, we see that it has the 15th Army, the 6th Panzer Army, the 5th Panzer Army, and the 7th Army. And they have reserve units under each. Some of those also have reserve units. So if we focus in on the 5th Panzer Army, we see that the 5th Panzer Army has the 3rd Panzer Grenadier as a reserve unit, 9th Panzer, and the Führer Grenadier Brigade. And they have the 66th Army Corps and the 58th Panzer Corps assigned to it, along with the divisions assigned to each of those. You can see with this that this document would be useful for kind of tracking, because this is all based on a specific period. This is for January 21st, 1945. And you can see how they're useful to tracking where units were assigned during various periods of time, where each division was assigned to. This is a great overview look, and as I mentioned in my previous video, this is a great document for starting your research of a division and trying to figure out what the parent units of that division was, so when you're looking for records, you would know which parents to look at. When doing division research and you want to see what the division was composed of, you want to go to the organizational diagrams that actually show you the individual units inside the division. So we'll switch to one of those now. This is a theoretical, so this is what a Volksgrenadier division should look like. So this isn't an actual division, this is just the theoretical or the standard. One thing I'd want to point out with this document is it has a flow to it. So at the very top is the division units. So this would be the division staff, and typically it has a map unit and a police unit, as this one does. And then basically the units flow downward, starting with the most significant. I know that what the most significant units is probably open to argument, but I think you could say that for a infantry division, the most significant units are likely the infantry regiments. So in this particular case, that's where we start at. So I will zoom in. And so we see that this infantry division has 3 regiments. The square flags represents regiments. And each regiment that would represent a KStN, this flag would. This unit here is the headquarters company, and it too would represent a KStN, would be represented by a KStN. These solid bars here in front of these diagrams represent company, so it identifies a company. So then you have the triangular flags, and these are the battalions, the 1st and 2nd battalions with the sign. Each would have its own KStN. These are the staff units and also the supply company. And then we have companies 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 being a heavy company. So in an infantry battalion, you have 3 standard companies and a heavy company that has the heavy weapons. 5, 6, 7, then 8 again is a heavy weapon. And then down here we have 13. which is the infantry gun company, and then 14 is the tank destroyer company. Now, the reason it starts at 13 and is supposed to go into 9 is that the old organization for infantry divisions was 3 battalions per regiment. And so you would have a 9, 10, 11, 12 company, and then 13 would be the next one. So that's the reason it goes to 13. Then you have anti-tank battalions and the Fusilier company. One thing you will notice that some of these flags on the stem, there are additional symbols. So this 2 circles represents motorized, and the horizontal bar represents anti-tank. So this is a motorized anti-tank battalion, and it has an assault gun and towed guns as well. If we go down to the artillery, we notice that the artillery has a regiment, so it's a square flag, it's a regiment. These 2 bars here represent artillery unit, so that indicates it's an artillery regiment. And then you have 4 battalions with batteries under those. A little further down, we see that the signals battalion is identified by an arrow here in the stem, and double arrow represents engineers. The circles under the companies here represent that it's motorized. 2 circles represents motorized. 1 circle here represents partially motorized, and that's why the stem of the battalion flag has a circle representing partially motorized, because some of the units are motorized and some of the units are partially motorized. This circle under the engineer companies represents a bicycle. If the ones that are filled in black would not have been filled in, it would just simply been the cross inside the circle. That would have represented motorcycle. And then down here for the regiment, supply regiment, we see it's represented by 2 horizontal bars, and it too has 2 circles representing that it is a motorized regiment. So that there's a basic description of what these organizational diagrams represent and how they look. Now we'll go to some specific ones for specific units. And we're going to start out with this one here, which is a December of 1942. The interesting thing about this particular organizational diagram is that you'll notice there are numbers representing these. Remember, I've mentioned that one of these companies represent a KStN. These have numbers on them, and then they have a KStN chart on the left here where you can take the number. So this battalion staff, if we go over here, 4, we see it's KStN 1107, November of 1941. Makes it much easier to figure out what KSTNs were used for this particular unit. This is for the 2nd Panzer Division. You will notice that this is late 1942, and many of the KSTNs are November of 1941. You will also notice the symbols on this diagrams are a lot different than the later war diagrams. Now, the KSTNs being identified as unique, most of them generally do not have the KSTNs, but I find that to be a very good feature on the ones that you can find it on. Here's another example. This is the 1st SS Panzer Division, and on this type, I want to point out that here we notice that it shows the authorized number of weapons and the actual number of weapons, and also the authorized number of vehicles and the actual number of vehicles. Also, we have a personnel count categorized by rank groups, in a sense, officers, NCOs, enlisted, and these are for supply troops. This is a grand total over here. And if we look down here, these are the combat troops. So in theory, if we add the combat troops to the supply troops, we should come up with a total that matches this total here. Now, I will point out that even though this is a specific unit diagram, this is still representing theoretical in terms of the weapons, because if we notice here on the Panzer IVs, they're showing 22 per company, same with the Panthers, but if we go down here and we look at the counts, Panzer IVs 98 authorized, 30 present. Panthers 73 authorized, 23 present. So these numbers here So you need to kind of watch that to make sure what these numbers represent, whether they're still looking at theoretical or really looking at actual unit numbers. This one does, however, show you that for each of these sections, it's showing you the authorized number of men and the actual number of men. So that is kind of useful, even though you are getting it over here as well. Here you get it by unit. So for this entire Panzer regiment, for this entire both regiments, for this for the Panzer Grenadiers. So those are some useful things on this type. I have one more type to show. This one here is for the 5th Mountain Division. This one here is different. I've rarely seen these where it actually shows you the breakdown in this manner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right off to the side, showing you what the manpower count actually is. This one here also has the weapons authorized and actual. Does not seem to show vehicles, but it is a infantry type division, so there's probably not that many vehicles anyways. It also has a KStN list down here. There's no numbers identifying where they are on the diagram, but at the same time it does give you the KStN, which is kind of nice. What I want to point out on this particular one is this here, and you will see these on various of these diagrams, is this bar here that's got the diagonal lines coming down it. This represents this section here, so 81.1% are is what is available. These men are present. 2.9 are sick or wounded, typically less than 8 weeks, so they're still with the unit. And 16% is the shortfall. So this is basically telling you what capacity the unit is at. And you can see it's there for all the others too. Sometimes they're showing wounded, sometimes they won't. So these are just some of the different types of organizational diagrams that are out there. There are still some other varieties because they were kind of created by the units in a sense. They kind of had their own way of doing it. But that's pretty much all I had to show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was useful. If you think it would be useful for me to go over a specific gliedering in more detail, let me know in the comments or let me know in some way. Also, if you look at the description section, I will put a link to the blog post that will allow you to download some of these documents that I was showing and some other documents related to these organizational diagrams. Thank you.